Ellen, thank you so much for joining us today. Would you like to start by just introducing yourself for anyone who might be listening or watching later down the road?
Hi, Gabby. Yeah, sure. So I'm Ellen Rawley, and I'm the owner of Ellen Rawley Creative Strategy, and I work with farmers who are doing value-added products and have a number of services for farmers who are launching and scaling value-added products. And specifically today, we're going to be talking about the Value-Added Producer Grant, and I've been writing this grant for 4 funding cycles now. I've written 11 of them, 17 if you count the ones that right now are being decided on, and so far have had a 100% success rate in getting people these grants. So I love talking to them, talking to people about them and what they can do for farms, because I both do this one-on-one grant writing with people and also have a mentorship. So I've seen different sizes of farms get this grant, different types of projects, and I'm really excited to share more info with your farmers today.
Thank you so much, Ellen. That is such an impressive track record. So I know we're really excited to just have your input. The first question I have for you today is, what types of farms can apply for this grant? Who is it for exactly? We know it says value added in the name, so is it only for people who are making jams and sauces, for example?
Yeah, it's a great place to start. So what type of farm do you have to be to apply? So the main thing with that, and I'm not going to get into too many of the nitpicky details because we're just doing an overview here. The main thing is you have to be a farmer who's actually involved in the day-to-day operations of your farm. So whether there's a single farmer or 2 farmers or it's a co-op of farmers, the majority of the people, a family farm, the majority of the people have to actually be involved in the day-to-day operations. If you just own a farm and have people staff it and you're kind of like a corporation or something that's not involved, this isn't the right one for you. When it says value added, this is what I love the most about this grant. When we think value added, like you said, we typically think jams, sauces, things that are in a product. It is like in a final product form. And this grant is for those people, so that's wonderful. But it's also for people who are selling fresh produce in a way that adds value in the marketplace. So, for example, people who are selling as organic or local or free range. It doesn't just have to be produce. It could be meat. It could be free range, grass-fed, all of those kinds of things. Eggs that are free range, for example. It can also, there's part of it for people who are doing energy-related projects on their farm, like taking walnut shells and turning it into biofuel or something like that. And it can also be people who are selling as local. If it's local, it has to be actually for human consumption. The part that I talked about with organic or other types of language that brings you more money in the marketplace, that can actually be non-edible things. So you could do, say, organic flowers, for example.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense, and I think all of those are really important kind of distinctions between them. So thank you for giving us a quick overview on that.
Yeah.
I'm wondering, once a farmer knows that they would be eligible, what could they use this grant to fund?
So there are 2 types of grants. There are multiple actual types of this grant, but the main kind of way it's broken down is a working capital grant or a planning grant. Mostly people, I think, that I've worked with at least, they tend to go towards the working capital because that's really so the deal with this grant is you have to have a product or a way that you're selling your produce that it's adding value in the marketplace. So we have to prove that. And then we have to show that you have a project that's going to grow your sales and grow your customer base. And basically it funds the things that are doing that part of it. So, for example, it's not going to fund anything related to you actually farming the raw commodity. So seeds, water, like labor to plant, harvest, none of that gets covered. It also isn't for building out spaces or like building out a kitchen or something like that. What it is for is everything from after the raw commodity is harvested, and then whatever the value-added process is, and then the sales and marketing. So, for example, it could be like the labor to wash and bunch your herbs and twist tie, the organic twist tie on it, and then a new salesperson to outreach to new stores, and then a delivery driver that's going to deliver this stuff, and then, you know, point of sale marketing material that's going to talk about your farm, and the website that's going to help do your direct to consumer orders, things like that. So it's all on the side from after harvest through to final sale, and mainly around the production of it. So it can also actually be labels, jars, those kinds of things, packaging if you have it, the labor of the production, and then the sales and marketing kind of through that funnel. The planning grant, which is the other type, that really goes towards a third-party feasibility study, business plan, or marketing plan. So that one's for if you have an idea and you want to get a third party to come in and test the viability of it and create a really solid plan for you to grow that new business venture. With that feasibility study, the next year around, you can apply for a value-added producer grant at a larger dollar amount. So that's a kind of fun way. If you're looking for like $250,000 in funding, you might need a feasibility study. You can get a planning grant to pay for part of that feasibility study and then use that down the line to apply for another grant.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. And so say if a farm is actually in the working capital phase and they want to fund an ineligible activity, say they want to throw a harvest party and they're thinking this is going to bring more folks to the farm and get them more sales, should they pass this grant over?
That's a great question, because I do, a lot of people, when they come on a call with me to see if they're eligible, they have ideas for what they want to use the grant for that are not eligible. Like, for example, throwing events like swag. They want a working capital grant, but they're really looking to redesign all their packaging and pay a designer, which no longer really fits under working capital. That's kind of a planning grant. The thing I always tell people, because often once I dig in with someone, is the way you can think about this grant is there are possibly things you're already paying for. Like, say, for example, in the example I gave of it's going to pay for the labor of the bunching. You know, you have to show that you're going to grow your sales. So now you have more bunches that people are bunching, but it's going to cover the amount of labor that you've already been paying, say, for the bunching of your herbs. So if it's done by somebody else, I should say, because this is where it's always the caveats. It can't actually pay your own labor. It's paying like labor that you're hiring. So if it's covering that and you've already been spending that, what does that free up budget to do? So possibly we can get to a work plan that we're covering enough costs that you're already, you have been covering in your business so far, and that frees up the budget for that harvest party or for that swag. You know what I mean? Like, we can find a way that what the grant is going, I would say don't just skip over it, because it can be a piece of a bigger puzzle of how you fund this venture and growing this venture.
Wow, Ellen, you have so much knowledge on this. This is just awesome. I love that you are thinking already like of a workaround, and yeah, just very cool. Thank you for sharing that. I think my last question for today, and I'm thinking we should definitely do a part 2 to this, to our chat today, but the last question for today is this grant only for established projects and farms, or can new farms and new projects also apply?
Yeah. So the one thing I don't want people to I want to make sure people come away with knowing that they don't have to be a specific size or have a specific number of years experience to apply for this grant. I have worked with people that are in year 2 of farming on this grant, and they've gotten it, and it's been a really big benefit to them growing their brand and their customer base. So definitely starting there. It does help if you have you do want to see some amount of sales. So if you have had no sales, I don't think this is the grant for you. I'd say wait a year, build up some sales. There is a part of the grant that is for new products, but even with that, typically I want to see something that I can pull from to show that we have some sort of reason for believing this venture is going to work. You almost think of it as like it's almost like creating a mini business plan, applying for this grant, and you're going to the government and saying, hey, do you want to invest in this? That's like how I think of it. That's not a literal thing that's happening, but it's how I think of it. So for example, if you want to sell, like this year I had someone who's doing apple cider vinegar. They had not been selling their own apple cider vinegar yet. They did have a farm stand. They were selling other products, and they were selling someone else's apple cider vinegar. So I could show that they had those sales. I could also show they had olive oil sales and say, okay, we think this many olive oil customers would also buy the vinegar. So you do want to have some kind of sales to start with, but it doesn't have to be that you've been in business for 10 years and you have $500,000 of sales. Definitely not. If you're year one and you have like 50 customers, you can work on a smaller grant.
I was going to say, that's amazing, and I think gives probably a lot of hope to so many people. So just thank you for answering that question too, and thank you so much for being with us today. Is there anything else that you kind of want to add before signing off?
No, thank you, Gabby. It was just great talking with you, and I love the resource you've created with FarmRaise. If people want to learn more about this grant, I have a lot of stuff on my website, ellenrawley.com. And I really just recommend people look more into it and apply, because it's hard in a small farm's budget to find where the money for marketing and sales comes from. And it's so important these days to have that budget. So look into it, possibly apply. Take advantage of these opportunities that exist, because they're really powerful.